हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी सन्माता जी दंडवत प्रणाम। All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev.
हरे कृष्णा प्रभु जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
Yeah. Samit Prabhupada, Hare Krishna. Aryan Prabhu, Dandavad Pranam. Sandhya Mata, Dandavad Pranam. So Aryan Prabhu, are you in front of computer?
Prabhuji, I'm actually on phone, Prabhuji.
You are on phone.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. I am from mobile. Just give me a couple of minutes, okay? Let us connect. Yeah. Are you able to hear me, Mataji and Prabhuji?
Yes, प्रभु जी।
Yeah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So yesterday we completed seventh chapter of Bhagavad Gita's review. Now let us go to Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, seventh chapter. So let me open for a minute. Yeah. So this is the Bhagavatam. Chapter Canto 1, entitled as Creation, and 1.1.7, no? First, not 1, Canto 1, Chapter 7. Okay. The last time we read conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva. So from today we'll read from 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. Yeah. So let me start with first verse. The chapter 7 entitled The Son of Drona Punished. Who is son of Drona? Anybody knows?
Ashwatthama Prabhu.
Correct. Yeah, Ashwatthama, right. Yeah. We'll start from first verse. Okay. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Rishi Shaunaka asked, O Suta, the great and transcendently powerful Vyasadeva heard everything from Sri Narada Muni. So after Narada's departure, what did Vyasadeva do? Purport. In this chapter, the clue for describing Srimad Bhagavatam is picked up as Maharaj Parikshit is miraculously saved in the womb of his mother. This was caused by Drauni, Ashwadhama. So Drona's son, other name is son's other name is Drauni also, Ashwadhama. Acharya Drona's son, who killed the 5 sons of Draupadi while they were asleep, for which he was punished by Arjuna. Before commencing the great epic Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Vyasadeva realized the whole truth by trance in devotion. Yeah, Samyukta Mataji, please read.
Yes, Prabhuji. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Sri Suta said, on the western bank of the river Saraswati, which is intimately related with the Vedas, there is a cottage for meditation of Samyaprasa, which enlivens the transcendental activities of the sages. Purport. For spiritual advancement of knowledge, a suitable place and atmosphere are definitely required. The place on the western bank of the Saraswati is especially suitable for this purpose. And there is the ashrama of Vyasadeva at Samyaprasha. Samyaprasha, Prabhuji, is that?
Yeah, the place name of Samyaprasa. Right.
Okay. Srila Vyasadeva was a householder, yet his residential place is called an ashrama. An ashrama is a place where spiritual culture is always foremost. It does not matter whether the place belongs to a householder or a mendicant. The whole Varnashrama system is so designed that each and every status of life is called an ashrama. This means that spiritual culture is the common factor of all. The brahmacharis, the gruhasthas, the vanaprasthas, and the sannyasis all belong to the same mission of life, namely realization of the Supreme. Therefore, none of them are less important as far as spiritual culture is concerned. The difference is a matter of formality on the strength of renunciation. The sannyasis are held in high estimation on the strength of practical renunciation. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Sandhya Mataji, please read this.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah, Rich.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In that place, Srila Vyasadeva, in his own ashrama, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. Purport. Under instructions of his spiritual master Srila Narada Muni, Vyasadeva concentrated his mind in the transcendental place of meditation.
Yeah, read this also.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thus, he fixed his mind perfectly, engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any thing of materialism. And thus, he saw the absolute personality of Godhead along with external energy, which was under full control. Perfect vision of the absolute truth is possible only by linking process of devotional purpose. This is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. One can perfectly realize the absolute truth, personality of Godhead only by the process of devotional service. And one can enter into the kingdom of God by such perfect knowledge. Imperfect realization of the absolute by the partial approach of the impersonal Brahman or localized Paramatma does not permit anyone to enter into the kingdom of God. Sri Narada advised Srila Vyasadeva to become absorbed in the transcendental meditation on the personality of Godhead and his activities. Srila Vyasadeva did not take notice of effulgence of Brahmana because that is not absolute vision. The absolute vision is the personality of Godhead, as it is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7.19, Vasudevaha Sarvam Iti. In the Upanishad also, it is confirmed that Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, is covered by the golden glowing Hiranmayena Patrena, wheel of impersonal Brahman. And when that curtain is removed by the mercy of the Lord, the real face of the Absolute is seen. The Absolute is mentioned here as a Purusha or person. The absolute personality of Godhead is mentioned in so many Vedic literatures, and in the Bhagavad Gita, the Purusha is confirmed as the eternal and original person. The absolute personality of Godhead is a perfect person. The Supreme Person has manifold energies, out of which the internal, external, and marginal energies are specifically important. The energy mentioned here is the external energy, as will be clear from statements of our activities. The internal energy is there along with the absolute person, as the moonlight is there with the moon. The external energy is compared to darkness because it keeps the living entities in the darkness of ignorance. The word apashrayam suggests that this energy of the Lord is under full control. The internal potency or superior energy is also called Maya, but it is spiritual Maya or energy exhibited in the absolute realm. When one is under the shelter of this internal potency, the darkness of material ignorance is at once dissipated. And even those who are Atma Rama or fixed in trance take shelter of this Maya or internal energy. Devotional service or Bhakti Yoga is a function of the internal energy. Thus, there is no place for the inferior energy or material energy, just as there is no place for darkness in the effulgence of spiritual light. Such internal energy is even superior to the spiritual bliss attainable in the conception of impersonal Brahman. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that the impersonal Brahman effulgence is also an emanation from the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The Parama Purusha cannot be anyone except Sri Krishna himself, as will be explained in the later slokas.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Aryan Prabhu. Aryan Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. The Supreme. Due to this external energy, the living entity, all the transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reaction of material miseries. Purport. The root cause of suffering by the materialistic living beings is pointed out with remedial measures which are to be undertaken and also the ultimate perfection to be gained. All this is mentioned in the particular verse. The living being is by constitution transcendental to material engagement, but he is now imprisoned by the external energy and therefore he thinks himself one of the material products. And due to this unholy contact, the pure spiritual energy, the pure spiritual entity suffers material miseries under the modes of material nature. The living entity misunderstands himself to be a material product. This means that the present perverted way of thinking, feeling and willing under material conditions is not natural for him. But he has a normal way of thinking, feeling and willing. The living being in his original state is not without thinking, willing, and feeling power. It is also confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita that the actual knowledge of the conditioned soul is now covered by nescience. Thus, the theory that a living being is an absolute impersonal Brahman is refuted herein. This cannot be, because the living entity has its own way of thinking and his original unconditioned state also. The present conditional state is due to the influence of the external energy, which means that the illusory energy takes the initiative while the Supreme Lord is aloof. The Lord does not desire that a living being to be illusioned by external energy. The external energy is aware of this fact, but still she accepts a thankless task of keeping the forgotten souls under illusion by a bewildered influence. The Lord does not interfere with the task of the illusory energy, because such performances of the illusory energy are also necessary for reformation of the conditioned soul. An affectionate father does not like his children to be chastised by another agent. Yet he puts his disobedient children under the custody of a severe man just to bring them to order. But the all affectionate Almighty Father at the same time desire relief for the conditioned soul, relief from the clutches of the illusionary energy. The king puts the disobedient citizen within the wall of the jail. But sometimes the king, desiring the prisoner's relief, personally goes there and pleads for reformation. And on his doing so, the prisoners are set free. Similarly, the Supreme Lord descends from his kingdom upon the kingdom of the illusory energy and personally gives relief to the form of the Bhagavad Gita, wherein he personally suggests that although the way of the illusionary are very stiff to overcome, one who surrenders onto the lotus feet of the Lord is set free by the orders of the Supreme. This surrendering process is a remedial measure for getting relief from the bewildered way of the illusory energy. This surrender, someone else will read or
Complete this paragraph.
okay, bro. The surrendering process is completed by the influence of association. The Lord has suggested, therefore, by the influence of the speeches of saintly persons who have actually realized the supreme conditioned souls are engaged in His transcendental loving service. They get a taste for hearing about the Lord, and by such hearing only are they gradually elevated to the platform of respect, devotion, and attachment for the Lord. The whole thing is completed by the surrendering process. Herein also the same suggestion is made by the Lord in his incarnation of Vyasadeva. This means that the conditioned souls are being reclaimed by the Lord both ways, namely by the process of punishment by the external energy of the Lord and by himself as a spiritual master within and without. Within the heart of every living being, this Lord himself as a super soul Paramatma becomes a spiritual master. And from without he becomes a spiritual master in the shape of scriptures, saints, and initiator spiritual master. This is still more explicitly explained in the next shloka. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Aryan Prabhu. It's a very big purport written by Srila Prabhupada. Explanation about various things: external energy, internal energy, marginal energy, three modes of middle nature, action, reactions, thinking, feeling, willing, how we place, how this middle nature forces us to think, divide of Krishna. Okay. Anandram Prabhu, would you like to read? Yes. Thank you for joining for today.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandot Pranam.
No, no,
I
yeah.
just had a little bit of time. I thought I'll join and at least read one.
Yeah. That's a really. We are very happy for you. Please read.
Personal superintendence of the illusory energy is confirmed in the Vedas, the Kenopanishad, in relation to the demigods controlling power. Herein also it is clearly stated that the living entity is controlled by the external energy in a personal capacity. The living being, thus subject to control of the external energy, is differently situated. It is clear, however, from the present statement of the Bhagavatam that the same external energy is situated in the inferior position before the personality of Godhead or the perfect being. The perfect being or the Lord cannot be approached even by the illusory energy, who can only work on the living entities. Therefore, it is sheer imagination that the Supreme Lord is illusioned by the illusory energy and thus becomes a living being. If the living being and the Lord were in the same category, then it would have been possible for Vyasadeva to see it. And there would have been no question of material distress on the part of the illusion king, or the supreme being is fully cognizant. So there are so many unscrupulous imaginations on the part of the monists to endeavor to put both the Lord and the living being in the same category. Had the Lord and the living beings means the same, then Srila Sukadeva Goswami would not have we taken the trouble to describe the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, or they would all be manifestations of the illusory energy. Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum remedy for suffering humanity in the clutches of Maya. Srila Vyasadeva therefore first of all diagnosed the actual disease of the conditioned souls. That is, their being illusioned by the external energy, he also saw the perfect supreme being from whom the illusory energy is far removed. Though he saw both the diseased conditioned souls and also the cause of the disease, and the remedial measures are suggested in the next verse. Both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living beings are undoubtedly qualitatively one, but the Lord is the controller of the illusory energy, whereas the living entity is controlled by the illusory energy. Thus, the Lord and the living entities are simultaneously one and different. Another point is distinct herein. The eternal relation between the Lord and the living being is transcendental. Otherwise, the Lord would not have taken the trouble to reclaim the conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya. In the same way, the living entity is also required to revive his natural love and affection for the Lord. And that is the highest perfection of the living entity. Srimad Bhagavatam treats the conditioned souls with an aim to that goal of life. Hare Krishna.
Beautiful, na, Prabhu? These lines, how Prabhupada, the living in
Absolutely. Prabhu.
very beautiful. Na? Also required to revive his natural love and affection for the Lord. That is the highest perfection of the living entity. Krishna Prema, Srimad Bhagavatam treats the conditioned soul with an aim to that goal of life. So Bhagavatam gives Krishna Prema. So let us read. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Deepa Mata, please read.
Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat. Sorry for joining in late.
Okay.
Can you hear me clearly? Because I logged in.
Clearly, yes. Go ahead.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The material miseries of the living entity, which are superfluous to him, can be directly mitigated by the linking process of devotion service. But the mass of people do not know this, and therefore the learned Vyasadeva compiled this Vedic literature, which is in relation to the supreme truth. Purport. Srila Vyasadeva saw the all-perfect personality of Godhead. This statement suggests that the complete unit of the personality of Godhead includes his parts and parcels also. He saw therefore his different energies, namely the internal energy, the marginal energy, and the external energy. He also saw his different plenary portions and parts of the plenary portions, namely his different incarnations also, and he specifically observed the unwanted miseries of the conditioned souls who are bewildered by the external energy. And at last, he saw the remedial measures for the conditioned souls, namely the process of devotional service. It is a great transcendental science and begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name, fame, glory, etc. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Revival of the torment affection or love of Godhead does not depend on the mechanical system of hearing and chanting, but it solely and wholly depends on the causeless mercy of the Lord. When the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere efforts of the devotee, he may endow him with his loving transcendental service. But even with the prescribed forms of hearing and chanting, there is at once mitigation of the superfluous and unwanted miseries of material existence. Such mitigation of material affection does not wait for development of transcendental knowledge. Rather, knowledge is dependent on devotional service for the ultimate realization of the supreme truth. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Let me read. Yeah. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once and to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. Shoka Moha Bhayapa, one of the important verse. Yasyam vai Shriyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktir Utpadyate Pumsa Shoka Moha Bhayapaha. Purport. There are various senses of which the ear is the most effective. This sense works even when a man is deep asleep. One can protect himself from the hands of an enemy while awake, but while asleep, one is protected by the ear only. The importance of hearing is mentioned here in connection with attaining the highest perfection of life, namely getting free from three material pangs. Everyone is full of lamentation at every moment. Here he is after the mirage of illusory things, and he is always afraid of his supposed enemy. These are the primary symptoms of the material disease, and it is definitely suggested herein that simply by hearing the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, one gets attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and as soon as this affected the symptoms of material disease disappear, Srila Vyasadeva saw the all perfect personality of Godhead. And in this statement, the all perfect personality of God, Sri Krishna is clearly confirmed. It's okay, Prabhu. Yeah, Anandram, Prabhu. You wanted to log off. The ultimate result of devotional service is to develop a genuine love for the Supreme Personality. Love is a word which is often used in relation with man and woman. And love is the only word that can be properly used to indicate the relation between Lord Krishna and the living entities. The living entities are mentioned as Prakriti in the Bhagavad Gita, and in Sanskrit, Prakriti is a feminine object. The Lord is always described as a Parama Purusha, or the supreme male personality. Thus, the affection between the Lord and the living entity is something like that between the male and the female. Therefore, the term love of God is quite appropriate. Samyukta Mata, please read this.
Yes, Prabhuji. Loving devotional service to the Lord begins with hearing about the Lord. There is no difference between the Lord and the subject matter heard about him. The Lord is absolute in all respects, and thus there is no difference between him and the subject matter heard about him. Therefore, hearing about him means immediate contact with him by the process of vibration of the transcendental sound. And the transcendental sound is so effective that it acts at once by removing all material affections mentioned above. As mentioned before, a living entity develops a sort of complexity by material association, and the illusory engagement of the material body is accepted as an actual fact. Under such false complexity, the living beings under different categories of life become illusioned in different ways. Even in the most developed stage of human life, the same illusion prevails in the form of many isms and divides the loving relation with the Lord, and thereby divides the loving relation between man and man. By hearing the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, this false complexity of materialism is removed, and real peace in society begins, which politicians aspire for so eagerly in so many political situations. The politicians want a peaceful situation between man and nation, but at the same time, because of too much attachment for material domination, there is illusion and fearfulness. Therefore, the politicians' peace conferences cannot bring about peace in society. It can only be done by hearing the subject matter described in the Srimad Bhagavatam about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The foolish politicians may go on holding peace and submit conferences for hundreds of years, but they will fail to achieve success. Until we reach the stage of re-establishing our lost relation with Krishna, the illusion of accepting the body as the self will prevail, and thus fearfulness will also prevail. As for the validity of Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from revealed scriptures, and there are hundreds and thousands of evidences from personal experiences of devotees in various places like Vrindavana, Navadvipa, and Puri. Even in the Kaumudi dictionary, the synonyms of Krishna are given as the son of Yashoda and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parabrahman. The conclusion is that simply by hearing the Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, one can have direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and thereby one can attain the highest perfection of life by transcending worldly miseries, illusion, and fearfulness. These are practical tests for one who has actually given a submissive hearing to the readings of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mata. Hare Krishna. Sandhya Mata, let us spend another 5 or 6 minutes. Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Mata. Sandhya Mata.
Okay, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Translation and Prabhupada by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadeva Goswami, who was already engaged in the self-realization. Purport: Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras compiled by the same author. This Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is meant for those who are already engaged in self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam is so made that one becomes at once engaged in the path of self-realization simply by hearing the topics. Although it is especially meant for the Paramahamsas, are those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depth of hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification, but even such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Sukadeva Goswami was liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth, and his father taught him Srimad Bhagavatam. Among us mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of King Parikshit and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaja Parikshit was ruling the world as a king of Bharatavarsa, the chastised the personality of Kali. He chastised the personality of Kali. According to revealed scriptures and astrological calculation, the age of Kali is in its 5,000th year. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5,000 years ago. Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. That is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under the instruction of Narada. Srimad Bhagavatam is a science for the following path of Nivritti Marga. The path of Pravritti Marga was condemned by Narada. The path is the natural inclination for all the conditioned souls. The theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is a cure of the materialistic disease of the human being, or stopping completely the pangs of material existence.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji.
Yeah, another 2 words will be. So how much big is there? So this is big one. Okay. One last verse will decide. We'll do that. Aryan Prabhu, please read this one.
Yes, Prabhuji. In translation, Sri Saunaka asked Sutta Goswami. Sri Sukadeva Goswami was already on the path of realization, and thus he was pleased with his own self. So why did he take the trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature? Purport. For the people in general, the highest perfection of life is to cease from material activities and be fixed on the path of self-realization. Those who take pleasure in sense enjoyment, or those who are fixed in material bodily welfare work, are called karmis. Out of thousands and millions of karmis, one may become an Atma Rama by self-realization. Atma means self, and Arama means to take pleasure. Everyone is searching after the highest pleasure, but the standard of pleasure of one may be different from the standard of another. Therefore, the standard of pleasure enjoyed by the karmis is different from that of the Atma Ramas. The Atma Ramas are completely indifferent to material enjoyment in every respect. Srila Sukadeva Goswami had already attained that stage, and still he was attracted to undergo the trouble of studying the great Bhagavatam literature. This means that Bhagavatam is a postgraduate study even for the Atma Ramas. They have surpassed all the studies of Vedic knowledge. Hare Krishna, Guruji.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you for reading. Just see, let me see what is. This is one of the important words actually. Atma Ramascha Munayo Nigrantha api urukrame Kurvanti ahaitikim bhaktim Ittam bhuta gunohari. Actually, I remembered one in one of the lecture. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, he has described this verse for many days. Different understandings with this verse. Means so much potency is there. That's why Prabhupada is given so many things in this purport. No? So we'll read Monday. We'll read on Monday. Okay. Thank you so much for joining. Vacha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Transcendental Book Reading ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaura Hari Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much for joining. See you all on Monday. Okay. Hare Krishna. Happy Friday, Krishna Conscious Friday.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.